and I might answer them. I might not, but you got to give it a shot. Our senior producer for the Huckabee Show here on TBN, Pam Case, is with me today. She reads the questions, and by the way, I don't know what they are. These are not questions that I have been given in advance, so they're going to be as new to me as they are to you. Now, if you want to send a question to get into the chat, or better yet, you can send a super chat. You know what that is? I'd never heard of that before, but somehow a super chat, I think you actually have to pay money, and then your question is more likely to be answered. Isn't that crazy? But can I tell you something? I have no idea where that money goes. It doesn't come to me, so I don't care whether you do it or not. If it came to me, I'd say, please do it, but I don't get it. But you might get your question. That's how this works. All right, there are going to be moderators watching the chat. I guess that's so that we don't get carried away. I'm sure it's not to control you. It's probably to control me. And also, be sure and subscribe. You can do that by hitting the button right there below the screen and hit the notification bell. That'll tell you when we're going to do another one of these. And we'd love to get your comments. We actually will read them because we may decide that you have a better idea of doing this than we do. All right, let's get started. Pam, do you have some questions already?
I'm excited they let us come back.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so here's one right now. Love your discussion. How can we put a stop to Congress from stealing our Social Security that we have paid into?
Boy, that's a great question, because I believe so strongly that people need to be reminded Social Security is not a government giveaway. It is your money. I've been paying in Social Security since I was 14 years old. 14. And I didn't do it voluntarily. It wasn't like I said, I don't need this money. I'm going to send it to the government. Let them spend it. No, they took it out of my paycheck. Pam, I'll never forget the first time my daughter, Sarah, got her first paycheck. She was working in the concession stand at a tennis court. And she came home and she said, Dad, look at this. They ripped me off. And I said, what? She said, look at my check. They ripped me off. I said, who ripped you off? She said, I don't know. Look here. They took all this money out. And I just started laughing. I said, welcome to the Republican Party, kiddo. That's the government that just took it out of your check. Here's what we need to do to answer that question. How do we get Congress to keep their mitts off our money? Just keep making noise, but keep pushing back when you hear some politician talk about Social Security as an entitlement. It is not an entitlement. It is your money. In fact, if you'd have taken that same amount of money and put it in a stock account or in a compounding savings account, you would have a lot more of it than the government has been hanging on to for you. So good question. Fight, scream, don't stop, and never, ever accept somebody telling you that Social Security is some kind of entitlement or government giveaway, because it is your money. You earned it, and the government took it away from you, and you had nothing to do about it.
And a big thumbs up to Ruby Howell. She provided that question
Good
for
question.
us today. Good question. So here's one from Karen Pearsall from Thousand Oaks, California. And a reminder to everybody, this is your chance to get to you directly this afternoon. Right. Okay, hello, Mike. Just heard that Newsmax is going to the left. What do you think?
News to me, I would be shocked. I honestly doubt that's true. Not sure where you heard it. Could have been one of those things you heard on the interweb. Don't believe everything you hear. I know most of the people over there. They're good folks, and I cannot imagine that that would be the case.
Okay, here we go. Next question. Richard Sifford from El Dorado, Kansas is asking us, why should I back a Hitler-type political leader that would rather be on the golf course instead of church? I don't believe that Trump is Catholic or Jewish with Saturday worship. He wants to jail everyone that opposed him, just like Putin. Control the elections to stay in power like Putin, and you call this a country under God? God is the farthest thing from Trump's goals. How do you respond to that?
I'm going to mark you down as undecided when it comes to Donald Trump. I get the impression you're not really clear on that. First of all, I don't get what the heck you're talking about when you say he wants to jail everybody. Who did he jail? Nobody. He jailed nobody that I'm aware of. But a lot of his people were rusted out of their homes at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning by armed federal agents who could have simply just said to his attorney, hey, we'd like to have you come in and sit down and talk. But they didn't do that. And they tipped CNN off all the time. So I honestly, look, I get it. You don't like Trump. A lot of people don't. But if you're going to come to me, bring me some facts. And you didn't do that this time. I'm not going to try to tell you Donald Trump was a church choir boy. I always said I'm not sure he could find John 3:16 in a Mark New Testament. But I like what he did when it came to standing up against China, standing up against Russia, making us energy independent, creating jobs at record levels for people who are Black, Hispanic, for women, and for that matter, for anybody, raising the economy of the country where every family was about $4,000 better off than before he took it. And a couple of issues near and dear to my heart: most pro-life president in all of history, period, and most pro-Israel president in all of history, period. That's what I liked about it. Okay.
So this is a good time for us to reach out to the folks that are watching, already joined us, to make sure that they put questions in the chat for us, and more importantly, share it so that other people. By the way, we're excited that people are joining us. We want to let folks know YouTube not doing us any favors to get the word out on our streaming. So you have to do it for us, folks. Like and share this with all your Democrat friends too, right?
Yes, indeed.
All right. Talk a little bit about the show itself here, the Huckabee Show on Fridays, just so people know when we tape Fridays, airs on Saturday night, so that folks can join us. Because this is a free ticket today. By the way, it's a free ticket to come to see us.
Well, it is. And frankly, I think it's about the only free ticket in all of Nashville. If you are ever going to come to the Nashville area and you're going to be here on a Friday night, most of our tapings are done Friday evening. Occasionally, we'll do one earlier in the week. But you can go to Huckabee.tv, click on for tickets, and find out when we're taping and when tickets are available. I promise you, the people who come to this show for a taping, they have a blast. They have so much fun. They tell us that. You can see it in their faces. And so it's a free ticket. We tape usually, I think, around 7 o'clock. People get here around 5:30 or 6 to clear security. We have a pre-show with comedians. So we don't just make you sit in a chair and sit in silence for a while. We do some entertaining things. Then we start the taping. We're usually out of here by 8:15, something like that. So it's a fun event, and you should come. And again, go to Huckabee.tv. Click on tickets, and we look forward to seeing you in our theater. It's a beautiful theater, by the way.
Okay, I've so wanted to talk to you about this off camera.
Okay.
We're just going to do it here.
All right.
Because one of our viewers actually brought it up. Aliens, Pentagon claims are real. What are your thoughts as a Christian about this?
Well, I don't know if you know this, but Pam is actually an extraterrestrial. We got her from the planet Pluto. She was flown in on this saucer thing and landed
right here.
Pow, there we go. No, I don't know what to make of it. I'm not well versed in whether or not there are UFOs, but I've talked to legitimate, sane people who have seen things that are inexplicable, that nobody has an explanation for. People in the military, various scientists. So the honest answer is, I just don't know, but there must be something going on out there. I just don't know what it is. Yeah.
Well, whatever you are, alien or not, you join us for a show on Friday night.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think will happen with Dr. Fauci with all this email stuff since they've been released? And Deanna Wiley is asking that question.
Deanna, I wish I knew. I'm shocked that the mainstream media actually had a hand in helping to expose the duplicity of Dr. Fauci's comments. We now know that he was just telling us a bunch of stuff that he knew wasn't true a year ago. And he was in conversations with people from these health organizations that were desperately trying to cover up what they had done in what's called the gain of function processes in the Wuhan lab. A year ago, people were saying Donald Trump's a racist. He's a xenophobe because he's calling it the Wuhan virus or the China virus. Well, that's where it came from. It's like saying that you're a xenophobe or a racist if you talk about some kid having the German measles. Here's what we should be worried about. Millions and millions of your tax dollars ended up in this lab. And if you had a severe consequence from the COVID issue for the past year, your business went under, you lost your job, your kids didn't get to go to school for a year, you had to go around wearing a mask, whatever happened to you, just remember, your tax dollars help fund what happened in that lab. You ought to be pretty ticked off about it, and you ought to be demanding that people who helped bring that about and who covered it up are accountable, which would mean Dr. Fauci. And I'm wondering, will he survive this? He shouldn't, but we'll see. By the way, be sure to subscribe. Do that right there on the screen, and click the notification bell. That means we'll let you know when we're going to do this again in case you don't get your question answered this time. And leave us a comment. We'd love to hear what you think, especially if you want us to keep doing this. That would be nice to hear.
Absolutely. Keep putting those questions in the chat, just like Ruth did. Ruth says, Governor Huckabee, I would like to say that I love your entire show, and I love when you play the guitar, like we all do. And I would like to know how your wonderful daughter, Sarah, is doing. She must win, says Ruth. We love her so much.
Oh, well, thank you, Ruth. Obviously, I love your comment, and Sarah's doing great. She is incredibly busy, working very hard. Her poll numbers are astronomical. A lot of people saying, oh, this race is already done. Let me tell you what she knows and what I know. There are only two ways to run for public office: unopposed or scared. Because if you're not unopposed, that means you can still be defeated. She's running as if she is 65 points behind rather than 65 points ahead, which is smart on her part. But I'm really proud of her. And she's having a great time and working really hard to become the next governor of Arkansas.
So Rex Renard, I think is the way you say his name, says, Mr. Huckabee, sir, you and your daughter are jewels to this country. And he wanted to say to you, Happy Father's Day, and say hello to Sarah for me. Now, do you know Rex? Is that a familiar name to you maybe?
I don't know. I might, but I had to think about it a little while.
Okay. So a really quick break, just to remind folks who are watching to go into the chat box, share, of course, this with your friends if they are out there. And we do this. We're trying to do this more often. We started this a couple of weeks ago, and they're allowing us to do it a second time to talk to you about what is going on in the world. What is right now your top of mind item in the political world that as you're thinking about concerns that you have and politician politically, where are you when you're sitting there looking at the news? What's your number one concern right now out there about our country?
I think it's probably getting accountability for the Wuhan virus, making sure that what happened to every American, and I'm not just talking about the 600,000 who died. I mean, obviously they're the highest priority because people lost family members to this. I lost close friends, some former staff members of mine who died from COVID. So I care deeply and intently on a personal level. But from a broader level, I care that our country and the whole world had its economy completely shut down. We had people who were locked in place. We had churches that didn't have services for months and months, all because of COVID. And if this happened because the Chinese government, let's make clear, the Chinese Communist Party government, hid what they could have told us that would have maybe limited the spread of this to a far lesser area and concern, then we've got to not only know this, we got to do something to push back and to make them pay and hold them accountable for it. If we don't, it'll happen again. And I'm really, really concerned about that because this was a horrible tragedy to so many American families and businesses.
What about right now with the unemployment funding too? You've got almost a stalemate now between the parties. And so what about unemployment now? Most of the Republican government's saying, okay, we're not going to take any more money.
This ought to be pretty simple. I applaud the Republican governors who have said that they're not going to just keep indefinitely funding the unemployment insurance for people who could take a job, but they'd rather just get their unemployment checks. There's something terribly wrong with the government program that will pay you more money to stay home and not work than you could get paid by going to work. I believe this: if you are able to work and there's a job that's available and people need you in that job and you say no to it, your unemployment ended that day. Simple as that. There's just no reason that people should not be working for the benefits they get. Now, if you can't get your job, nothing is available. That's why we have unemployment insurance, and I'm all for that. But I'm not for people. And the reason I know this is happening is because I own several small businesses. But the other thing is we're in the process of trying to fix a house that was just virtually destroyed by flood damage. We can't get people to come to the job site and work because they say to the contractor, well, I've got my stimulus check and my unemployment through July, so I'm really not interested in coming and doing, various things until then. I just think that's absurd. And if you drive up any street, you'll see help wanted signs virtually everywhere. Brick and mortar stores, grocery stores, certainly the restaurant and hospitality industry. Many places, even McDonald's, can't open their dining rooms because they can't get labor to come in and help. So it's a drive-through only, and some of them are limiting the hours because of it. That's absurd.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that great question. We've got more coming to us. Thank you so much for people who are spending some of their afternoon with us. It's a great opportunity to share this with others and put your questions in the chat. You've got direct access to Governor Huckabee, just like I do, right here on set. From Sarah Petty, Governor, do you think voter fraud is the number one issue in America today?
I think it's certainly high up on the list. I don't know if I'd say the number one issue, because there's so many number one issues on any given moment, I could probably say. But it's real. I mean, it happens. Was it enough to affect the last election? The honest answer is we don't know. Now, sometimes people say, we absolutely know. Well, we don't. And the reason we don't is because the people who could tell us won't let us in on the audit. You see, I think this, again, I'm not going to definitively say the election was stolen, because I don't know. Here's what I'll tell you. If I were on the Democrat side, I would be demanding a full audit of all the elections in places of controversy like Georgia and Michigan and Wisconsin. I'd be demanding it. You know why? Because if it's as clean as they say it is, and Joe Biden really did get 16 million more votes than Barack Obama, who was the most popular Democrat in the history of the country, if that's true, then frankly, I'd want to know that as a Democrat so I could say to the Republicans, here you go. Here's the audited results. Now shut up about it. And you know what? If we had all that where we could see it, what could we do? We'd have to just suck it up and take it. Why do they not want us to have a full accounting for all those ballots? That's something no Democrat has been able to successfully answer for me.
Okay, Blaine Strong is asking us this afternoon, do we really need more than the original Constitution and the Bill of Rights? It seems like everything after that is self-serving to political agendas, not the people's best interests.
Well, I'm not sure that's true. I think giving women the right to vote, pretty good idea. It should have been there to begin with, but it wasn't. So when we amended the Constitution for that to happen, I think you'd have to say that that's a right thing to do. There were other constitutional amendments. I think some of them were horrible. I think the 17th was one of the worst. It's where we ended up electing senators by popular vote. Most people do not know that up until the turn of the last century, around the early 1900s, U.S. senators were not elected. They were appointed by the state legislators. And the reason that was important is because while Congress was elected by the people at large, the state legislators appointed or picked the senators so that they would always be mindful of how things would affect states. This protected the 10th Amendment, which said if it's not in the Constitution, federal government needs to keep their hands off of it and leave it to the states. Federal government puts its hands on everything and leaves nothing to the states, largely because the senators are elected and they think of things on a national level rather than how it affects their own individual states. So yeah, there have been some terrible constitutional amendments, but it is our process and the genius of our Constitution. We have the power to change it. So if there's some that aren't so good, we can get rid of them. By the way, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment, because that's how we can interact with you.
And you're interacting with the governor live and in person right here on YouTube. Another great question, is it possible to bring Bibles back in schools? What's your feeling about that?
One way to do it is go to a Christian school. Will it come back to public schools? I probably will not live to see it. Look, I'm not suggesting that public schools with tax dollars should indoctrinate children to a particular spiritual worldview. I understand that. Wouldn't even be in favor of it, because that would be tilting the scales. But the Bible is the single most influential book in all of human history. And to ignore its existence, to ignore its influence, to ignore its message, even from just a historical or a literary standpoint, is really a abdication of good education responsibility. But the one way you can ensure that children are also getting a biblical education and a biblical worldview is to do everything you can to make sure that they can go to a unapologetic Christian school that holds the Bible up as the inerrant, infallible Word of God.
Okay, so I have to throw in a little levity. Forensic Gold is writing in this question. Did anybody buy Tucker Carlson new socks last Christmas?
Did
anybody buy Tucker Carlson new socks last Christmas?
I didn't. I don't know. Maybe somebody did, but wasn't me. I don't really care what kind of socks Tucker has, just being honest with you.
Or even if he wears any, right?
It doesn't matter.
Here we go. Here's one from Carson Hankins from Dexter, Missouri. Mr. Governor, thank you for inspiring me to stand up for the Christian, patriotic, and conservative values and principles that we hold dear. A change in my life and become a better me, and I am forever grateful for your inspiration. I hope that someday I meet you and I get to talk to you and be a guest on your show.
Wow.
So God bless you and your family, and God bless the USA. Have a great day, Mr. Governor.
What a nice thing to hear. What a nice person. I hope I get to meet you, not for your sake, but for mine. Gosh, that was very, very delightful.
Got to be a quick trip from Dexter, Missouri to Nashville. Come join us for the show. That would
Please
be fun.
do.
Matt, 0311, just wrote, I just read Italy wants to mandate forced vaccination. Any chance that other leaders might want to follow suit?
I'm sure there will be some countries that will insist upon it, particularly for travel from foreigners into their land. I don't see it happening in the U.S. Now, here's what I do think will happen. You will see some private businesses who will say that you must be vaccinated, or maybe they'll say, if you're not vaccinated, you have to wear a mask. But they may even say it. It's going to be like the classic no shoes, no shirt, no service. And it may be no vax, no packs, no sacks. You don't walk out of the store. I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised. I just think if the vaccination, and I've had it, if it protects me, then I don't care whether you have it or not. That's up to you. And if you don't want to have it, you know what? It's your risk. It's not my risk, because you can't give it to me if the vaccine works, right? So I don't know why people who have said, I want the vaccination, okay, great. Now that you have it, why don't you shut up and let the people alone that didn't want it? If they get COVID, they made a conscious decision not to be vaccinated or not to wear a mask. But I kind of like freedom, and I like people getting to make their own decisions about that sort of stuff. And I just believe with, all my head that, those of us who have taken the precautions, we should not be threatened by people who haven't, right? What is it to me?
Good answer. O.H. Lawson, Governor, writes us, what can be done to clean up, this is a good question, clean up CIA, FBI, and DOJ?
Well, you certainly have hit upon something that is desperate in needing to be done. It will not be done under this current administration because they're part of the problem, not part of the solution. Look, one of the reasons that I was very supportive of President Trump and believed that he was on the right track is because he recognized that these are institutions that have not just decided that they're going to manipulate things for one side over the other, but they're not playing within the rules that they themselves are supposed to enforce. That's what really disturbs me. It ought to disturb every American. So if we don't get some good, responsible members of Congress who are in the majority, won't help if they're in the minority, they'll never get it done, and get a president elected who has the courage to start taking names and kicking the backsides of some folks, it won't happen.
We're getting some great questions from the folks that are watching us today. Still about 5 minutes or so we have left, so make sure you leave your questions in the chat so that we can answer, and you're talking directly to the governor today.
Yes.
Love that, live and in person. What do you think, this is from Marcia Anderton, what do you think of the new gun law in Tennessee that's carrying a gun without a permit? It's
a big debate, and the question is, since the Second Amendment is a constitutional right. It is not like driving. There's nothing in the Constitution about driving because that's a privilege. But being able to own a firearm and protect yourself is a right, not a privilege. That's a big difference. So the question is, how can the government regulate or restrict something that is your right? It's a much bigger debate than we have time to get into here. One could argue that you have a right to free speech, but you don't have a right, as the old Supreme Court standard was, to go into a crowded theater and yell fire. The same thing could be true, that you have a right to free speech, but you don't have a right to maybe yell and scream at people and intimidate them to the point that they can't carry out their own freedom. So all rights do have some level of restriction. It's called manners, quite frankly. But I think that's a question that the courts ultimately are going to have to decide. I got no problem with the idea that maybe as a constitutional right, I don't have to ask the government for permission to own or carry a firearm. Now, if I use it, I better be prepared to answer to the government if I've improperly used it to take the life or the health of someone who didn't deserve it. But that's no longer a Second Amendment issue. That becomes a criminal conduct issue.
Okay, we're talking about future guests. We've been asked by Afraid Not 2016, are you going to have Rand Paul on your show?
He's been on my show more than once, and his wife Kelly has also been on the show. Love having Rand. Would have him anytime. He's a great guy. I appreciate that he's got the courage of his convictions, and he's consistent about it. Even if there are things you may not agree with Rand Paul, you know, he's not a guy that licks his finger and sticks it in the wind and just rolls with whichever the wind is blowing. And I appreciate that about him. Love to have him back. So Rand, if you're watching, doubt you are, but if you are, you're welcome anytime.
Okay, and we've also put in the chat the link to that particular interview. So if you are interested in seeing Rand Paul on our show from a couple of years ago, it is actually in the chat. Excellent. So before we go, we've really got right at a couple of minutes. I want to make sure, again, we remind folks what it's like to come here on a Friday to be part of the audience. The ticket, I don't think people realize the tickets are free. Yeah. It doesn't cost to come and join us on a Friday night for the show that airs on Saturday evening. Yeah, and if people want to pay for the tickets, Pam and I will split the cost, whatever you bring it. No, we won't do that. We want you to come. We have a good time, and we are convinced that of all the things people do in Nashville, people tell us this regularly, they have as much fun coming to the taping of our show as about anything they've done. We keep it entertaining. You don't see everything on the show that airs that happens in this theater. And frankly, a lot of people find that that's the most exciting part, is seeing all the behind the scenes things with Trey and the band and the interactions. And it's just fun. So Huckabee.tv, go to that website, and then click on tickets and find out when our tapings are and order free tickets. Let's try one more question before we have to go. Here we go. This is the last one. Thank you to Dennis Goodburn for making it happen. How can Biden and the Democrats add items to the infrastructure bill that are not infrastructure? Well, they do it because they're in the majority. And if we don't understand the power of an election, you heard the phrase, elections have consequences. Good case in point. When you start saying that infrastructure is childcare, I mean, it might as well be that infrastructure is providing servings of macaroni and cheese to 6-year-olds. It's got to mean something. And historically, it always has meant roads, bridges, airports, sewer systems, water systems, the things that provide the skeletal system to our economy. And we got to hold a feet to the fire for that. Well, it's time to wrap it up. So if I didn't get to your question, I hope you'll feel free to leave a comment after the live stream ends. You can also send it to me at my2cents@tbn.tv. Maybe I'll start off with many of your questions next time. And if you're not subscribed already, hit that little red button right below. And because subscriptions by themselves don't mean a whole lot, click the notification bell so you will know when we're about to have more videos popping up. And we got some good ones, I promise. Thanks for joining Pam and me on this stream. I'll see you tonight for the breakdown, and this weekend with Huckabee, which airs tomorrow night at 8, 7 Central. You do not want to miss it. Oh, and if you really hated this video, well, you can watch something else, but you'll want to watch this.